Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the College Education Department YouTube channel. Dear student, today I'm going to deliver the lecture from Interphysics, chapter number 16. The topic of my lecture is modulation and demodulation. I am Imran Sodhar, lecturer in physics, Government Degree College, Larkana. In this lecture, the students will be able to understand modulation, modulators, demodulators, types of modulation, amplitude modulation, and frequency modulation, and at the last, the difference between frequency modulation and amplitude modulation. Dear student, we are very lucky in this modern period that we can watch news dramas on the television at our home. These dramas and news are being broadcast from the thousands of miles from us. Even we can hear the sound from radio or any other electric device. Many of you may be the regular listener of FM 99, 101 or 105. But we never think that how this information or message or voice or picture is reached to us. So related with this, we have a technique or process which helps to bring the message or information to us, that is simply modulation. So, the modulation is a process of influencing data information on the carrier to transmit it a larger distance. In figure, we can see the wave, carrier wave, having a high energy, having high frequency, and while another wave that is called as a message or input having low energy, having low frequency. According to modulation, when both waves are mixed up or superpose each other, a modulated wave is generated. In modulation, the information or message superimpose on a carrier wave, changing in amplitude and frequency that allows information to be transmitted and recovered in the form of electromagnetic wave. Dear student, you can see this is a wave and this is a simply the picture signal or input or message or information. And this is a carrier wave having high energy, having high frequency, having low amplitude, and this wave having a low energy and low frequency. When both are superimposed, when both are added, when both are mixed up, a modulated wave is generated. This whole process of mixing the wave or message with a carrier wave, this whole process is known as a modulation. Now, what is the change? What is the result when both waves are mixed up? The result is that there is a change in amplitude and frequency. Yes, there can be the change, and there can be the change in amplitude, and there can be change in the frequency. So the information is transmitted at a large distance, and again it is recovered in the form of electromagnetic wave. Now the question is that why there's a need of the modulation, because this wave cannot be reached at a large distance, so it is mixed with a carrier wave having a high energy. So again the message is superimposed with a carrier wave, hence we can broadcast a message at a large distance. Modulators, the devices which perform the modulation are called modulators. For example, radio station, you can see the figure of the radio station in which there is a mic through which the message is delivered. Another example is a TV station. Demodulation is the reverse process of modulation. in which radio waves are converted into mechanical waves. For example, radio set, TV set, mobile set. In figure, initially there is a modulated signal when it reaches with the electronic appliances just like the radio set, TV set or mobile set. Before reaching the radio set, this is a modulated signal and this modulated signal is filtered and rectified. Two waves are being separated. One is a message and another is a EM wave. So resultantly we can hear or we can see the picture or message on right side of the figure. You can see that is a demodulated signal. Originally it was transmitted and again it reached safely, and this sound can be heard very easily. While the demodulators are devices which perform the demodulation, so these are called as the demodulators. For example, radio set, TV set, mobile set, these are the example of demodulators. Types of modulation. There are two types of modulation. Number one, amplitude modulation. Number two, frequency modulation. There is also the third type is that is called as a phase modulation. Anyway, we will discuss the two types of modulation, amplitude modulation and frequency modulation. Amplitude modulation. In this type of modulation, the amplitude of a carrier wave is increased or decreased or diminished with superposed modulated signal. As in the figure, the first wave, that is electromagnetic radiation having high energy, high frequency, and next wave, that is a message or information. So according to the process of modulation, when both waves are going to be superposed, so the lower modulated signal has been generated. So in this modulated signal we can see the different types. There's a clearly change in the amplitude sometime is increase, amplitude sometime is decrease, and somehow between the two loops the amplitude is diminished. So this method in which the amplitude of a wave is going to be increase or decrease, this method is known as a amplitude. Dear student, in previous slide we discussed about the amplitude modulation. Now the next type of modulation is a frequency modulation. In frequency modulation, the frequency of a carrier wave is increased or decreased or diminished with superposed modulated signal. You can see the figure. The first wave, it is a EM radiation, and next wave again, that is a message or information. When both these are superposed, the lower last one wave, that is a modulated wave. So you can see there's a change in the frequency of the modulated wave. Sometime initially the frequency is lower, and you can see that clearly the two waves are combined together, the frequency is a high again. So this change in the frequency of a modulated signal, this process is known as a frequency modulation. Now, let's discuss about the difference between the amplitude modulation and frequency modulation. In amplitude modulation, the amplitude of a carrier wave is increased or decreased with superposed modulated signal, while in frequency modulation, the frequency of a carrier wave is increased or decreased with superposed modulated signal. AM amplitude modulation are better to transmit the signal for a long range, while the FM are better to transmit the signal for a short range, while the AM amplitude modulation have low quality transmission of sound, and FM they have high quality of transmission of sound. Dear student, you might listen the radio, and whosoever have experience to listen the BBC News. BBC News is actually from the band of amplitude modulation. So BBC news cannot be clearly heard. Their transmission is very because their quality is very low. While if we listen the FM 105, 101, 102, so the quality is very high. We can see, we can hear the sound having a great quality. Last difference, the transmission range from 540 kilohertz to 1600 kilohertz, while the transmission range start from 88 megahertz to 108 megahertz.